Imagine this: a millionaire restaurateur, one of the wealthiest in the city, sitting behind his desk in a sleek office, counting his profits, feeling untouchable. His empire is built on reputation, luxury, and the finest meals served to the elite. But what happens when a single decision shatters that illusion and exposes him for what he really is? A man who, despite all his success, can't seem to handle the pressure of a simple act of kindness. The scene starts to unfold, not in the plush setting of his upscale restaurant, but in a much more humble space, a delivery truck. It all started with a mistake that shouldn't have been a mistake at all. A delivery man, just another ordinary worker trying to make ends meet, made a small gesture that would cost him dearly. Givi, the delivery man in question, was just trying to do his job. He had no idea that the seemingly insignificant act of kindness he showed to a regular customer would trigger a chain of events that would cost him his livelihood. The wealthy restaurant owner, once known for his charitable contributions and impressive business acumen, would take it all away in an instant. The betrayal was ruthless and unexpected. Givi had been working for the Millionaire's restaurant for a few years, delivering food to various high-end clients. He was a man of integrity, a father trying to provide for his family, doing everything by the book. He wasn't the type to seek attention or try to climb the social ladder. He was simply a worker, trying to make an honest living. But that one act of kindness, giving a delivery meant for one customer to another customer who was in a rush, became the turning point in a story that would leave everyone questioning who the real villain was. The story takes a dark turn when Givi, the hardworking delivery man, finds himself humiliated and accused of theft. His only crime, attempting to help someone in need. The millionaire, in his arrogance, sees it as an insult to his empire, a blatant disregard for his rules. Without hesitation, he fires Givi on the spot. But this wasn't just any termination. It was a public disgrace, a humiliation that would stain Givi's reputation forever. And the worst part? The millionaire doesn't even give Givi a chance to explain his side of the story. Instead, he lets his pride dictate the fate of a man who had nothing but good intentions. As Givi stands there, his hands trembling, he can't believe what just happened. This wasn't the life he expected when he took on this job. This wasn't the respect he thought he'd earn after years of hard work and dedication. But the millionaire, sitting in his ivory tower, doesn't care. He watches as Givi walks out, his head hung low, stripped of his dignity, while the restaurant owner sits back smugly, convinced that he's in the right. But as the story continues, we start to see cracks in the millionaire's polished facade. Behind the wealth, the status, and the fine dining experience, there's a man who's lost touch with reality. A man who, despite all his success, seems to lack empathy for those beneath him. His behavior toward Givi may have been justified in his own eyes, but was it really the right decision? Could there have been another way? Or was Givi just another casualty in the millionaire's quest for perfection? What we don't know yet is that this incident is just the beginning. Givi is not someone who will let this go without a fight. The more he reflects on the unfairness of the situation, the more he realizes that he can't allow this to define him. And what's worse, the millionaire's actions might have repercussions he never saw coming. Will Givi rise up and expose the truth about what really happened? Will the millionaire's empire crumble under the weight of his arrogance? Or will he get away with it, leaving Givi to pick up the pieces of his shattered life? One thing's for sure, the story isn't over yet. As the tension builds and the stakes get higher, we're left wondering, how far will Givi go to get justice? How far will the millionaire go to protect his reputation? The answers aren't clear. But one thing is for certain, the fallout from this incident will be far from simple, and no one is walking away unscathed. As we leave you hanging here, with the fire of uncertainty burning in the air, think about this. In a world where the powerful can crush the vulnerable without a second thought, how far would you go to right a wrong? And what would happen if the tables were turned? Would the millionaire still make the same decisions? Or would he finally learn the hard truth about compassion, respect, and the real price of success? The days after Givi's firing were some of the toughest he had ever faced. He couldn't shake the feeling of injustice that clouded his every thought. How could someone, especially a millionaire who had everything, take everything from him for such a small, innocent mistake? The humiliation still stung, and he found himself replaying the scene over and over in his mind, questioning if there had been anything he could have done differently. But Givi wasn't the type to just lie down and accept defeat. He had a family to support, bills to pay, and a reputation to protect. His pride was wounded, and while he may have left the restaurant in shame, he wasn't going to let that be the end of the story. He knew that he had to fight, not just for his job, but for the dignity that had been ripped away from him in front of so many people. As the days passed, Givi began gathering evidence, talking to other workers at the restaurant, and reaching out to people who had seen the incident. He spoke to a few regular customers, some of whom were sympathetic to his cause. One customer in particular, a woman who had been a long-time patron of the restaurant, offered him a bit of hope. She had witnessed the firing and was outraged at how the millionaire had treated Givi. She promised to stand by him and speak up if he decided to take legal action. That was the spark he needed. Meanwhile, the millionaire, who had once been seen as a philanthropist and a successful businessman, was feeling the pressure of the fallout. His empire, which had once seemed untouchable, was starting to crack. News of the incident had spread, and while the media hadn't picked it up yet, whispers among employees and customers were growing louder. People who had once supported him began questioning his actions. Was he really the kind, generous man they thought he was? Or was he just another wealthy person with too much power and not enough empathy? As much as he tried to keep a cool exterior, the millionaire couldn't ignore the whispers and the pressure mounting around him. His restaurant's image was at risk. Customers who had long praised his business for its high standards of service were now talking about how poorly he had treated an employee who had worked diligently for years. Even some of his most loyal customers started to look at him with doubt in their eyes. It wasn't just about the firing anymore. It was about the way he had humiliated Givi in front of everyone, stripping away his dignity for something so trivial. The millionaire couldn't help but wonder if his actions had been a mistake. But as guilt began to weigh on him, there was also another side of him that refused to back down. He was a man who had built his wealth from the ground up, a man who had made countless decisions that others had called ruthless, but had ultimately paid off. He believed in the concept of loyalty, of following the rules no matter the cost. Givi had broken those rules, and to the millionaire, there was no room for exceptions. He couldn't let a small mistake unravel everything he had worked for. And yet, the pressure of the public perception was becoming too much to ignore. What neither Givi nor the millionaire knew was that their worlds were about to collide in a way neither of them could have predicted. As Givi prepared to take legal action, he began digging into the millionaire's past, looking for anything that could give him leverage. He knew that in order to win, he would have to prove more than just the wrongful termination. He needed to uncover something deeper, something that would expose the millionaire for the man he truly was. Meanwhile, the millionaire was facing a crisis of his own. His reputation was on the line, and with it, the success of his restaurant. The media hadn't picked up the story yet, but the tension in his business was growing by the day. He needed to resolve this quickly, but he couldn't do it without losing face. His pride was on the line, and that was something he couldn't afford to lose. As the days dragged on, the tension between the two men continued to build. The battle between Givi's desire for justice and the millionaire's need to protect his image was becoming increasingly complex. Givi's resolve only grew stronger as he learned more about the millionaire's past, his questionable business practices, his shady deals, and his treatment of employees behind closed doors. Givi began to see that this wasn't just about one mistake. It was about the way the millionaire treated people beneath him, how he used his wealth and power to trample over those who had no way of fighting back. The day Givi finally gathered the courage to confront the millionaire would be the one that changed everything. Armed with evidence and determination, he knew that this wasn't just about getting his job back anymore. This was about exposing the truth, about showing the world the kind of man the millionaire really was. But what he didn't know was that the millionaire wasn't about to give up easily. He was prepared to do whatever it took to protect his empire, even if it meant destroying Givi in the process. As the confrontation loomed, both men knew that their worlds would never be the same. The stakes were higher than either of them could have imagined. And with every passing hour, the tension between them grew, each man preparing for a battle that neither was sure they could win. What would happen when they finally came face to face? Would Givi's quest for justice be enough to topple the millionaire's empire? Or would the millionaire's ruthless drive for success come crashing down on Givi, leaving him with nothing but broken promises and shattered dreams? The clock was ticking, and the showdown was inevitable. The question now was, who would come out on top, and at what cost? The day of the confrontation finally arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. Givi had spent sleepless nights preparing for this moment, armed with documents, recordings, and testimonies. He walked into the millionaire's sleek office, ready to face the man who had destroyed his life. He could feel his heart racing, his palms sweaty, but there was a fire inside him now. A fire fueled by the desire for justice. The millionaire sat behind his polished desk, the same one Givi had seen him at so many times before. A place where decisions were made that affected the lives of so many people. This time, however, the roles had reversed. Givi wasn't just a delivery man anymore. He was a force to be reckoned with. The millionaire tried to maintain his composed, confident air, but even he couldn't hide the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Givi," he said, his voice icy, but trying to remain calm. "I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish here, but you've made a mistake. I've made my decision, and it's final." Givi didn't flinch. He walked forward, placing the stack of evidence on the desk. "No, it's not. You didn't just fire me. You humiliated me. You took everything from me, but now I'm taking something back." For a long moment, there was silence. The millionaire's eyes darted to the documents in front of him, his expression faltering as he scanned them. Givi had done his homework. He had gathered detailed evidence of the millionaire's shady dealings, his manipulation of employees, and the countless incidents where he had bullied others into submission. He wasn't just there to get his job back. He was there to show the world the true face of the man who had fired him. "I have every right to terminate you," the millionaire finally said, but his voice lacked the usual conviction. The confidence that had once defined him seemed to be slipping away piece by piece. "You broke the rules." "No," Givi said firmly, shaking his head. "You broke the rules. You think because you're rich and powerful, you can do whatever you want, but that's not how it works. People aren't just numbers on a ledger. I wasn't just a delivery guy to you. I had a family, I had dignity, and you took it all away with one decision. The millionaire sat back in his chair, his face paling. He had built his empire on making tough, calculated choices. But this was different. Givi wasn't asking for his job back anymore. He was demanding respect. He was calling out the truth. And in that moment, the millionaire realized that no amount of wealth, no amount of power could protect him from the consequences of his actions. But just when it seemed like the millionaire might cave in, something shocking happened. His phone rang, and without even looking at the screen, he answered it. Givi could see the change in his face as the conversation went on, his confidence returning. But this time it was darker, more dangerous. The millionaire turned back to Givi with a cold smirk. "You think you've won, don't you?" "Don't." The millionaire sneered. "Well, let me remind you of something. I can end this, all of it, right now. I have connections. I have resources. You'll be nothing more than a footnote in this story, and everyone will forget who you are." Givi stood taller, not intimidated. He had anticipated this kind of response. But what the millionaire didn't know was that Givi wasn't the only one with leverage. The woman who had witnessed the firing, the loyal customer, had already gone to the media with the story. And now the truth was about to come to light, whether the millionaire liked it or not. A news article hit the press just hours later, revealing not only the incident, but also the darker side of the millionaire's business practices. Details about his mistreatment of staff, his shady deals, and his ruthless methods were exposed to the public eye. The fallout was swift and brutal. His restaurant empire began to crumble. As customer after customer pulled their support, investors pulled out, and the media painted him as the villain in this story. The millionaire tried to salvage his reputation, but it was too late. His carefully constructed image of a generous entrepreneur was shattered. The public backlash was overwhelming, and his former employees came forward, backing Givi's claims with their own stories of mistreatment. Givi, on the other hand, found a sense of peace. He wasn't just fighting for his job anymore. He was fighting for something bigger. He had stood up against the system that tried to crush him, and in doing so, he had exposed a truth that many had been too afraid to face. In the weeks that followed, Givi found a new job at a restaurant that treated its employees with respect, and although he never fully recovered the financial losses from the firing, he felt a sense of dignity that he hadn't known in a long time. The millionaire, now a disgraced figure, was left to pick up the pieces of his crumbled empire. His wealth no longer enough to shield him from the consequences of his actions. The story left everyone with a stark reminder. Power and wealth might buy influence, but they can never buy respect. In the end, it's how you treat people that truly defines you. Givi had lost everything, but in the process, he had regained something far more valuable, his integrity. And the millionaire, he learned the hard way that no amount of money could ever shield him from the truth. As the dust settled, Givi walked away, knowing that the real victory wasn't in the courtroom or the media attention. It was in the quiet, personal knowledge that he had stood up for what was right, and that, in the end, was worth more than anything money could buy.